Good morning, everyone. I'm Don Zavis, National Sales Trainer and Sales Coach. Welcome to our Friday session. We appreciate you being here. I'm going to be on the stage alone, hopefully for the last time. Mr. Wechter, his foot is healing nicely, but they want to make sure that he does a return to full service here before he's ready. And last thing we want to do is make any situation worse. So we're keeping our prayers for him. Say prayers for him. We appreciate that. He is doing well and will likely be joining us, if not next Friday, hopefully soon thereafter. So thank you. Today's a wonderful session, Compressive Technologies. In fact, not only is it a wonderful session, this was the Don Zavis aha moment about 8 years ago when we started developing this ideology. So you're going to get the best of Don Zavis because I absolutely love this session. Hope you get a lot out of it. That being said, we like to start out with the kind of the sales current events. So, on the things that are plaguing our world, gas has continued to go down. We're going to put a check mark in the win column. The reason that it's gone down, unfortunately, is not a check mark in the win column. Apparently, the reason that it's gone down, I got to shut off my phone. Come in. Sorry about that. Onward. Hello there. Sorry about that. I'm the person that should have their phones off. So, so those that are joining us. By the way, if you're joining us on Facebook Live, thank you very much for being there. If you're joining us on YouTube Live, thank you for being there. If you're joining us on Zoom Live, thank you for being there. And if you're joining us on our Vimeo archive, thank you for being there as well. We truly appreciate it. That hopefully you're going to get a lot out of it for today. So we're talking about sales current events, and obviously the world has its challenges. Gas has continued to go down, which is a great positive. Unfortunately, the reason it's gone down is less people are driving. So, you take the win maybe with the loss, inflation continues to be high. One of the things that I am telling people, and I strongly encourage you to write this down. If you're taking notes, write this down. The next 12 months, we believe, based on every indicator, and I'm really blessed because I get to talk with lots of people, and I have a kind of a trusted advisor relationship with them, so I get kind of unabridged feedback. I get the rawest of opinions and the general consensus across the board. Finance, banking, everybody's the next 12 months are going to be challenging. And, and obviously many businesses were just hanging on by a thread because of the pandemic with the hopes that when COVID kind of went away, somebody would snap their fingers and their restaurants would be full capacity, their movie theaters would be full capacity, the cruise liners would be full capacity and such. And although it's heading in hopefully in the right direction, I think we're going to see some hiccups. So if you're writing notes, write this down. Your sales is going to be your number one concern in the next 12 months. Now, I have to preface that by saying, if you're a CPA, it doesn't mean you don't continue to be a good CPA. If you're a plastic surgeon, that doesn't mean you don't continue to try to be the best plastic surgeon ever. But what I find is that sales, prospecting, developing relationships, remarketing your existing clients is kind of the bastard stepchild of everyone's calendar. So when you look in their date book, when you look in their calendar or their day planner or something like that, there's all of this other stuff, and yet the things that really are going to make your cash register ring are the things that nobody does. So I will ask and say, well, how many prospecting contacts were you able to make? And they'll say, well, I wasn't able to make any today. I was doing blah, 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 blah. And I say, okay, well, I understand that, being busy. And I'll talk to them the next day. Well, how many prospecting calls were you able to make today, or visits, or contacts, or networking, or whatever? And they'll say some version of, I didn't have a chance to do that today. I was busy, blah, 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 blah. And what we find is, as we extrapolate that over time, we never have time. We have the clients that we have, if maybe low-hanging fruit, maybe not terribly profitable, but because they were easy to get, those are the only people that we have. So I am absolutely encouraging everyone, take your sales seriously in the next 12 months. If you're clients of Don Zavis Sales Training, please reach out to myself or any one of your trainers. We really want to focus in on that. Your ability to survive, and I believe this will be harder than even the pandemic was, because the pandemic was shared by everyone, and everyone had this giant question mark over their head. Nobody really knew what to do. Nobody knew what the extent was. It was what it was. This one, I think, is going to be more challenging because I think it's going to sweep across. And here's some of the economic indicators you're looking for. You're always looking at unemployment. Unemployment goes up, bad sign. Inflation goes up, bad sign. Costs increase of anything, bad sign. That's the hidden tax. And now we have an increase in tax that was just recently voted in, which is going to happen as well. So buckle the hatchets. We're going to be in for a bumpy ride. You absolutely positively want to commit to your sales. That being said, let's talk about today's session. Today's session was Compressive Technologies, and it was actually built out of a series of sessions that we started almost 10 years ago. And what it started with, kind of the humble beginnings, was I was working with a sales force, and they were going to triple the size of the sales force in a year. They had determined that their company plan was going to be very, very sales directed, which of course is something I completely agree with. And they said, how are we going to onboard all of these people, get them up in our culture, have them all work together? They're coming from different industries. They're going to have to work as teams. They're different races, creeds, colors, sexes, sizes, religions, blah, 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 blah. They're the cornucopia which makes the United States amazing. And we started developing the idea of how do you build a cohesive team in any capacity when you've got all these diverse people. And oh, by the way, you have a weekend to do it. You have a weekend, because they were going to have a retreat weekend to onboard all these new people. So I went to where everybody goes for information. I went to the internet. And I started looking and saying, how are we going to find people? How do big organizations be able to take all these diverse people from all walks of life, places, everything, and kind of get them all online? And I struck on a study that took place actually slightly before World War II. That just shows you I have no life if I'm looking at pre-World War II War Department studies. And the interesting thing about it, it was built to try to address a concern that they had. So now, anyone that knows anything about American military history, back in World War, and I'm going a long way to make a point, but it will make sense in a second. Back in World War I, when we got involved in the war, we essentially had a version of the draft, different than ultimately what it became. But essentially, we had a version of the draft. And what you would do is they wanted to try to teach soldiers, which they had to do quickly, how to be a soldier. So they took you off your farm in Alabama, off your logging mill in Wisconsin, out of your cherries in Michigan, and you were picking oranges in Florida, and somebody that came from New Mexico. And we're going to throw you all in a big pool, and we're going to teach you how to be a soldier. We're going to teach you to shoot. And we're going to teach you to march. And we're hopefully going to teach you to follow orders. Hopefully we're going to teach you to blobbity, 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 blobbity. And then we're going to take you and we're going to throw you on the front line. And here's what happened, the little-known secrets in World War I. AWOL, absent without leave, was enormous. Most of these guys that came off the places were not only out of their state, a lot of them were not even out of their county. We're going to put them on some foreign shore with essentially total strangers, and we're going to say, give up your life for the guy standing next to you. And you know what a lot of these guys said? Ain't going to happen. I don't know this guy. I just want to make it home. And although ultimately good prevailed in World War I, the War Department realized that if we do this too much, God forbid we have another type of a conflict on the face of the earth. Because now, because there's been a passage of time, our weapons are more sophisticated, our processes are more sophisticated. The war itself is going to be different. But a soldier with a gun is still the number one aspect that we have. That is our number one aspect, is the soldier with the gun. So they started to look at all of the things that they needed to do. Right? They knew that it was going to be a different kind of war. This is actually pre-World War II. They knew it was going to be a different kind of war. They knew the tactics were going to be different. But they knew they needed to create a different kind of soldier. Not just one that was good in being a soldier, although it was very important, but one that was good in being in a team of soldiers. And that's how the Compressive Technologies ideology developed. They said, we need to figure out a way in a very, very short period of time to take these diverse people from all over the world, or certainly the United States, different creeds, backgrounds, colors, sizes, races, everything like that, and we had to get them to think exactly the same. We have to have them fight exactly the same. We have to have them speak a language that's exactly the same. And how are you going to do this? So now we are pre-World War II. And the big heads that are in the War Department said, well, let's figure out the things that make people connected. What connects people to one another? Family, so it could be blood. Well, we can't make them family, although I'm sure there were some, the Saving Private Ryan aspects of it that came into play. But how do we take these people from all over the world and all over the United States, and make them think the same. Make them be concerned about the guy next to them even more so than their own life. So when the enemy is charging, they're not thinking, oh my God, I'm only worried about me, and turn tail and run. They're going to say, I'm going to stand with my brothers and potentially die with my brothers. So I want you to write that down. Compressive Technologies. And the operative word here is compressive. I'm just going to use the abbreviation Compressive Tech. Now, this has an enormous component into your sales, because sales is a relationship business, right? The people often say that, you want to be liked. And of course, everybody wants to be liked. But in sales, it's not only you want to be liked, you want to be appreciated, you want to be valued. All these things come into play in any relationship. The question is, how do you do this in a 60-minute sales call? How do you develop these lifetime relationships? And when I say lifetime, I mean just long, maybe not potentially lifetime. But how do you develop this? How do you differentiate yourself from everybody else on the face of the earth that might be selling the same product or service you have? So insert your product or service into this. So here's what the government said. And this is the beginning of the beginning of the beginning. And they said, what makes people different? What makes individuals different? And if you think about it, if you took people from all over the United States, one from every state, and you lined them up in front of you, what would be some of the things that make them different? Well, hold on a second, I lost my glasses. Oh, here they are. I need my spectacles for this. So what makes them unique? What makes them different? Well, maybe how they look is a good starting point. Maybe they have different clothes. The person that lives in Minnesota clearly is going to be likely dressed different than the person that's going to be in Texas. They're going to have different dialects. They're going to have different attitudes. They're going to have different opinions. And the first thing the War Department says, you know what? We got to get rid of all that. Everything that makes us different, we outwardly as well as inwardly, we have to change. Now, we're not going to be able to do this in sales, but I want you to see what this actually means. So first thing they did was everybody got a haircut. Whether you like it or not, whether you had you're sporting the DA like my dad did back in the early 50s, right? You had curly hair, short hair, long hair, blonde hair, but it doesn't make any difference. You know what you all have now? No hair. No hair. And you might have thought you looked styling in your Levi's jeans and your motorcycle boots. And the guy who lives in Montana loves his fur coat. You know what you don't get in the military? Your fur coat. You're going to all look the same. We're going to make you dress the same. You're going to eat the same. You're even going to talk the same. No matter what you said before, and no matter what you said before you got here, you know what you say? Sir, yes, sir. Exactly like that. If you remember those 3 words in the military, you're going to be just fine, because anytime anyone who's in a position of authority asks you anything, I will tell you, being a person in a position of authority, you know we only want to hear? Sir, yes, sir. Right? Like the military, just like life. So what they did is they wanted to break you down into your most minimal amount of things, and they're going to build you up, but they're going to build you up the same. They're going to teach you how to fight the same. The food that you eat, the same. The language that you use, the same. The clothing that you wear, the time you go to bed, the time that you get up. All the same, because at that moment, you cease to be Bob or Joe or Ricky or Pete. You are a United States soldier in whatever the branch that you got in. And that's how you identified. They broke you down so far when they built you up, you had nothing. Your only identifier was a United States soldier. Now, when you think about how that psychologically affects someone, how they think, you build them up. So now that you're not better, but you're also not worse than anyone that you're serving with, you're the same. And that rising tide raising all ships, that what benefits them, by de facto, benefits you. So they created the platoon concept. So if anyone who knows anything about military history, usually these small platoons are really kind of the smallest building block of the military. And now they put you in, and no longer were you Bob and Pete and Alabama and Orlando and Los Angeles. You were A company. You were B company. That's how you were identified. You were identified the same. Now, here's where it gets into sales. So if you've been holding your pencil, waiting to write, this is what I want you to write first. Number 1 in Compressive Technologies, shared experiences. Shared experiences. Shared experiences. You know, it's interesting. I hear people tell me all the time that the vacations that went the craziest, the vacation I remember the most is we were at the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun and we had a hurricane. There were 6 people in the entire hotel. My wife, I, my brother, and my sister-in-law being 4 of the 6 guests in the entire hotel. Everything was boarded up, everything was taped up, and I remember being on the 6th floor looking out over the ocean. And I remember my wife yelling, another tiki hut went down. Like on the beach, they had these like tiki hut things, and the hurricane pulled out another one. Now, we've been there many times before and many times after, but none of the trips are more memorable than that. That shared experience, that thing that we all go through together. And yet we as salespeople do very little to create these life-remembering events. Maybe because we're lazy. I don't know, maybe because we're cheap. Maybe because we don't want to do it. There's a million reasons. But what the military said is, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put you in boot camp. So we're going to take away every identifier that you've ever had about who you are, what you are, and whatever you were before you became a United States soldier, because from this point on, that's what you are. Whatever you were before, you left that at the door. Moving forward, you're a knight. And they made boot camp terrible. Now, I've never been in the military, although I hear terrible stories from a lot of people. But I will tell you that it was the government's idea in that report to make it miserable. Life remembering miserable. Because now they wanted to see, and they put you in environments where the team had to succeed, not the individual, which is what you did before. In World War I, they wanted you to be a great shooter. And if you were a great shooter, you got a marksman award. Well, if you're on a machine gun, it might take 2 and 3 and 4 people. If you're on a mortar, it may 2, 3, 4 people in order to have that thing work effectively. Shared experiences. They wanted you to go through something together that was so life-altering that you're never going to forget it. And I've asked many, many military people, not only in development of the session, but across my life, these people remember boot camp and whatever version of it they have. They remember it vividly. Hungry, cold, tired, angry, frustrated, mean, in pain, you name you name what you want to call it. They remember all of it. But the interesting thing about it is they had such enormous respect for their abuser. The gunnery sergeant that they worked with, the training person that they worked with, who was really their nemesis at the time. I mean, we've all seen Officer and a Gentleman. And I've always thought that was a little bit idealized, right, at the end, right, where they was walking up and he's, giving the corner to the Lou Gossett character and, how the character, you changed my life. And I always thought that was idealized for Hollywood, right? It's like, yeah, okay, it looks good on, Richard Gere with a tear in his eye. The reality is that I've actually heard is that that's not too dissimilar from the events that happened. All those things actually happened. Shared experiences is what gave them the capacity to come together. It made that lifelong memory that no matter what happens would never be shaken. Now, I'm going a long way to make a point. But we as salespeople, we do nothing like that. We go and we meet with somebody in Starbucks that they've met 5,000 other times, and then all of a sudden, we want to make a big impact on them. It's never going to happen. You make the impact when you share these amazing experiences. I had a client of mine one time. For the 3 years I knew him, he had always said how he wanted to learn how to fly. He wanted to learn how to fly. He wanted to learn how to fly. He had a birthday coming up, and we had a local airfield that was not too far away from his office in Troy, Michigan. So by the way, for anybody who's in Michigan, welcome. Go to Troy, Michigan. There's an airfield there. And I booked him for his birthday under this disguise of going out for the birthday lunch. We went out, we had a great lunch, by the way. And I bought him a flying lesson. It cost me $98. This was 10 years ago. And when I pulled up in front of the airport, he says, "Are we taking a trip?" And I said, "Yes, we are." He goes, "Where are we going?" I said, "We're going up in the air." And I said, "Who's going up in the air?" And I said, "You and I and the instructor." And he said, "Let me guess. Who's being instructed?" And I said, "You are." Now, that's $98. I've seen him 10 dozen times over the last 10 years, do you know what he always remembers? He always brings, first thing out of his mouth, that was the best birthday I ever had. I paid $98. Shared experience. I took a video. I had my video camera in the kit, a big giant one at the time, right? I took a video of him from the cramped back seat of this little prop Cessna. And it was all like this, right? It was all over the place, right? He may not know where his videos of his kid's birthday would be. He remembers where the video of that flight is. It's in his office. It's in a place of honor, and I look for it every single time that I go in there. Shared experience, right? Whether it's your sorority in college, right? All the things that you remember with such vivid accuracy that took place 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And you remember with such vivid accuracy, and yet you struggle to figure out what you wore 2 days ago. In sales, we have to make ourselves unique. We have to set and it has nothing to do with money, right? I've taken people rock climbing that were afraid of heights. And all I pay is maybe $20 or $30 to go in, and they don't have to go up to the top. All they have to go is up. If they go up 4 feet, it's 4 feet higher than they've ever been. And when you put that belaying harness on them and you can see the fear in their face, and you guys go up the wall together, you grab a motorcycle, they grab a motorcycle, you do a cross-country trip from just outside Detroit to Traverse City. And all you're playing in the back of your mind is that section of the Bob Seger song, 10 miles out of Traverse City. Those are the life-changing experiences, and you can build them. You create them by your creativity, your efficiency. If you want to make an impact on someone, you have to have a life-remembering experience. Doesn't have to be dangerous. You don't got to jump out of planes. Flying in it was more than enough. But the idea is you've got to do something memorable. If not, you're going to get caught in the rabble. That's why their first was shared experiences, because they said, we have boot camp to make these guys go onto a battlefield, virtual strangers a month ago. Strangers that are now going to go through enemy fire to get one of their fallen guys on the field. When before, I'd be like, better them than me. I'm not going that way. I'm going this way. Tough crap for him. Compressive. They needed to take this lifetime of experiences, because maybe you'll risk your life for a lifetime friend, somebody you've known for 30, 40 years. You might risk your life for that person. Probably not going to risk it for somebody you met the same month in the beginning of the month. So first step in compressive technology, shared experiences. Number 2, sense of loss. Sense of loss. They had to be able to instill into this relationship the idea that one of them not being there is an enormous loss for everybody. And you've seen it. Right? I mean, I used to play in rock bands, and any time when you would have one beloved member for some reason not be with us, you felt that sense of loss. That friend that you had all through college that went in a different direction that you did. The coworker, when you changed jobs despite your attempt to try to remain in contact, ultimately it just fell apart and you guys went your separate ways. That sense of loss was built into the idea that when one wins, we all win. And when one loses, we all lose. So every type of evaluation was done on a platoon-wide basis. It wasn't just that we all, that we had to get across the hill or over the top of the wall or do some kind of, obstacle course in a special time. We wanted us all to be the best. It's that sense of mutual success. But it's that feeling of that ultimate sense of loss. If you have clients that if you are not in their life will not feel that sense of loss, you need to work hard to bring additional value. That's why earlier in the session I said most of my clients see me not as their sales trainer. They see me as their business confidant. We call it trusted advisor. Many times we don't even talk about sales at all. We'll talk about the economy and the world and circumstances and COVID and whatever they want to talk about. Because at that time, they need a sounding board. They need someone else that they can trust, that they can be open and vulnerable to. That sense of loss. So not only do we want to have shared experience, one of my favorites, by the way, because I was a big hockey fan in Michigan, and everybody loves the Red Wings if you're in Michigan or certainly outside the Detroit area. And I would take and I would pay dearly for these, right? I would get playoff tickets. And they might be $250, $300. And I would take an important prospect or a client, and I would take them to Joe Louis Arena. And when the Red Wings were in a playoff game, the stomping would be so loud you would physically see dust coming from the rafters, the pipes, right, that had collected over years and years and years. You would watch your beer shake. That's what it was like. And the interesting thing about it is when I see these people long after that particular event took place, they remember that. They remember what it was like, the smells, the sounds, the feeling, the experience. Because most people never have that. Shared experience, sense of loss. Them not being with you, regardless of what it is that you do. You not being in their world diminishes their world in some way. Now I have people say, well, I just sell them widgets. Well, if all you think you do is sell them widgets, then that's all they're going to think you do too. What I want them to think is, oh my God, I buy my widgets from Bob, but it's all so much more. The widgets are the sideline. The widgets are the kind of the entry point. They're the greeting card to open the doors. Sense of loss. This is created. It happens organically, right? I can go back and say over 30 years, if you have a friend that you knew since grade school, and God forbid they pass away untimely, and you feel bad about it. Well, that's great. You've had 30 years to cultivate that. What do you do on your second day of boot camp? How do you make that? We do it all the time. Sense of loss. You not being around has a significantly negative impact on their life. Number 3, love who they love. I will tell you that if you love who they love, even though they may be predisposed to hate you, they will love you. Love who they love. Now, I'm not saying it is a disingenuous, kind of an end-around approach. No, it's nothing like that. If you love somebody in your world, that means you love all parts of them, including the people that are important to them. Love who they love. I'll give you a great example. This was many, many years ago. And we had an office that was at the top floor of the Prudential Town Center in Southfield, Michigan, right? Still there to this very day. And we had Big Ten ticket service, which was down on the concourse level along with all the other like stores and things like that. And I had a very important client of mine, and I called him, and we were just talking. He seemed very distracted. He says, hey, listen, Don, I'm sorry, I got to cut it off quick. And I'm like, dude, you seem distracted. What's going on? He goes, Jesus, I got a big problem. I'm like, well, what's your problem? He goes, well, I promised my wife and daughter I would buy her Hannah Montana tickets. Now, anybody who's had a kid back in the 80s or early 90s, what's her name? Molly Cyrus. Molly Cyrus was actually Hannah Montana. She was a television a personality that was very popular with the tweens, right? The 11, 12s, things like that. Well, this gentleman had promised his wife and daughter that he was going to buy them Hannah Montana tickets, right? The big ticket in town, right? He's going to get one for her and her best friend. And he was going to take them, right? Being the good dad he is. Well, being the normal dad he is, of course, procrastinated to the 11th level. And now there were no Hannah Montana tickets available anywhere in Michigan at virtually any price. So I said, whoa, you do have a problem. Because when the missus is upset, you have serious problems. I said, are you going to be around your office for a little while? He goes, yeah, why? I said, I'll call you back in a half hour. So I go back and I call Big Ten Ticket Service, which was in the bottom of the Southfield Town Center, Prudential Town Center. And I said, I need 2 tickets to Hannah Montana. And of course, my buddy there, the owner, says, there are no tickets for Hannah Montana. I said, oh, yes, there is. It's just we haven't found the person and we haven't named the price yet. I said, but I need 2 tickets. So sure enough, calls me back 5 minutes later. I have 2, $400 a piece. For 3, I'm sorry, he says, I got 3, $400 a piece. That's $1,200, right? And this was like, what, 15 years ago when $1,200 was money. I said, I want them. I said, I'll have my courier come down, pick them up, send me the bill. And they said, fine. I called him, I go, you're covered. He goes, what do you mean? I says, I'll have 3 tickets in my hand by 5 o'clock. He goes, well, where'd you get them from? I He says, that doesn't make any difference. You're going to have 3 tickets in your hand. Your wife's not going to know what a procrastinating weasel you were, and you weren't going to break your daughter's heart. Sure enough, not only are they tickets, they're 4th row. And he says they were, to anybody else, they were terrible because you spent the time like this. However, to his daughters and her girlfriend, golden. He goes, I got so many hugs and kisses that night from my daughter. I was a god. Because no other dads who procrastinated like I did, he goes, I owe you. How much do I owe you? I said, you owe me nothing. I said, but there's going to be a time when I'm going to need you, and I'm going to expect you to come through for me. He goes, Don, whatever it is short of, shooting somebody, you got it. And maybe shooting somebody, too, depending on who it is. Right? Now, ultimately, I got so much more business from them than the $1,200 that I spent. And I didn't do it with the idea of spending money. It wasn't like, oh, now he owes me and I'm going to cash in big and I'm going to rake him over the coat. No, nothing like that. Love who they love. Find the people that their kids, their parents maybe that have some health challenges you can help. Maybe just something simple that you can do when they have a problem. Right? I always tell people all the time, when people have a death in the family, now in Sicilian families it's a little different, but most people, when you have a death in the family, people will say, well, if there's anything I can do, right? And that seems very well-meaning, right? Is there anything I can do? Call me. Well, here's the thing. I know what you need to have done. I know you need to eat every single day, or at least you should. I know your kids probably need to go to soccer. I know money might even be tight. Maybe time is going to be tight. Maybe you've got guests coming in from out of town that need to get picked up at the airport and moved around and places to stay and things like that. So in a Sicilian family, you never say that. You never say if there's anything I can do. Here's what's going to happen. There's going to be a dozen short women dressed in black about this tall. They're going to be at your house. They're each going to be carrying 5 trays of things with aluminum foil on it. And on top of there, there's going to be taped a note that it says $350 for 4 hours. You will have enough food for probably the next 2 months. Why? Because you don't ask people what they need. Love who they love. And I will tell you, you might hate, right, your kid's Little League coach. But if your kid's Little League coach is good to your kid and you see it, he's supportive and he's there for him and he's nurturing, you can't help but love this guy. He might have entirely different politics, entirely different image of the world. He might be your biggest competitor. Won't make any difference. Love who they love. Ask them about their family. Find out what's important to them. I have a client, loves military aviation. I happened to be in a Barnes & Noble 10 years ago, and there on the discount table was a book normally selling for $60. Had a tag on it, $4. $4. I bought the book. I show up on his doorstep. This was a guy that would normally, I would take 5 weeks to get an appointment with. I showed up with this, and this was like, the book is like this big, beautiful, amazing pictures. And she called into her secretary calls in and says, hey, Don's here and he's got a gift for you. I went right in for $4, for my $4 giant book. I went right in the door. I stayed there for an hour. He invites me out to lunch, $4. Now, I didn't do it with that reason. And now to this very day, I guarantee if you go back, and he's in Ohio, you go back to his office in Ohio, I guarantee that giant military aviation book is on his coffee table in his office. He loved that, and I loved giving it to him. Find out how you can connect. Now, here's where it makes connection back to Compressive Technologies and in the military. You know what the military says to do? The military says that in case you ever go down in battle, you should always have a note that you've given to one of the people in your platoon that will get back to your family in the event that you fall in battle. Now think about that. They're going to carry your last words to the people that they love. Do you think, you could tear up just thinking about it. Do you think there's a commitment there? That they have kids and wives and they have all these lives, and if anything happens to you, they're going to step in to make sure that they're your surrogate, that they help and they'll keep an eye on the family for you. And they'll be there and they'll do things. Love who they love. All right? Number 4 on our list, Compressive Technologies. And by the way, these all work. Sense of value. Sense of value. I believe that every person has special magic. I really do. I believe you could take anybody off the street And if Tom Hanks was playing their life, he'd get an Oscar. I really do. I believe everybody has such an amazing, special life. They just don't realize how amazing that it is, right? Any woman, right? If Julia Roberts was playing you, right, she's going to get a Golden Globe. Why? Because I believe that everybody has amazing magic. And it's interesting that you see in any group, regardless of size, big, small, there's natural differentiations. Every person kind of plays the role, right? And they kind of go into it organically, right? And in my circle of friends, there was always the organizer, right? I'm not going to say his name because he occasionally watches these. But he was the organizer. If you had an idea, you would tell him, and then 3 hours later you come back and now you have a detailed itinerary. You know exactly how many miles from this point to this gas station, from this gas station to this McDonald's, from this McDonald's to the door of this, and then, we're going to meet for dinner at 6 o'clock. Everybody has amazing value. And yet, most people never recognize it. But in Compressive Technologies, what they did was they would build you up, again, because they're breaking you down to nothing. So they would take a person that's never been in authority at all, and they would make them platoon leader. Now they're in a place of authority. You would take the person that never was given any responsibilities because they thought that this guy was an incredible screw-up, and they would make him in charge of weapons. Probably the last place you'd want to put the guy who's identified as the screw-ups. And they picked all these values, they identified all these strengths that people had. And now you didn't start to see them just in the same light. You started to see people in the light of their sense of value. The military knew that. Because the guy who was never in a leadership role at all, when he was given platoon commander, now, by the way, he could just as easily be taken away platoon commander, but he would rise to the occasion. We've heard that word, rise to the, right? It's the guy who really isn't a good businessman, and his father dies suddenly and inherits the business. He rises to the occasion. It's the same thing with the people in our world. You look anywhere in your business world, in your sales world, I can create shared experiences for you. I can create a sense of loss, certainly if you don't limit yourself to the relationship that you have. I can love who they love, just in the course of conversation. I'll find out things about you, your family, your children, your parents, your brothers, your sisters, your neighbors, anybody in your world that I think that I can have an influence on that would ultimately strengthen our relationship. That sense of value. That sense of value, the idea that these people are important, you see it all the time. Right? I love bands that have great chemistry. You look at the Mick Jaggers and the Keith Richards. And then you look at other bands where the singer and the guitar player doesn't have any chemistry at all. You look at the old Bob Hope and Bing Crosby movies. I love the road movies, really popular in the 40s. Here's a little clue. They didn't know their lines. They literally would show up to the set. They would yell line. They would yell the line. They would deliver it to the camera, and then they shut the camera off. And then he'd do another line. And then he would say the other line. And then they shut the camera off. But they had such amazing chemistry, right? It's not by accident that Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks found their way into more than one movie. Why is that? Chemistry. That sense of value, that sense that you make this connection, which is almost at an ethereal level. So when you're on the battlefield and things are bad, which they certainly could go at any turn, you're not going to give up. You're not going to give up on this relation. You're not going to give up on this person. You're going to be the one that's going to go through the hail of gunfire, possibly dying yourself, to grab that guy off the field, because we leave no one behind. That sense of value is that every single person is critically important. And yet we live in a world where almost everybody and everything is devalued. Whether it's human life is devalued at the top end, the beginning and at the end, right? The people's, the issues that are related to everything from homelessness to poverty. We've gotten to the point where, value is such almost now become nebulous, and it's now, we'll tell you what value is. No, value is value. Every person in this platoon is critical. This platoon does not exist in its intact form the way it is without every single player. It's a critical nature, and that's why, again, I go back to the compressive technologies. I have 30 days to do this. So I not only make a soldier, but I make a team. Now, do your clients have a sense of value? Do they have a sense that you in their world transcends whatever your commercial relationships? If I just sell you widgets, I'm the widget guy. You could probably buy perfectly fine widgets from 20 other people. Why would you want to buy the widgets from me and not buy it from anyone else? And most people, by the way, struggle with that answer. And I will tell you, if you struggle with that answer, your prospects are going to struggle with that answer also. They see you as one of 20 other people. There's nothing about you that is so unique and so dynamic and so overwhelming that they could not imagine not having their widgets supplied by your company. Just if nothing more for the pure opportunity to be influenced or be involved with you. On the phone, face-to-face, over lunch, whatever reason. Again, sense of value in a world, and I tell people this all the time. I tell all of my clients I love them. Not in that gushy, stupid, no. I believe that everybody has value. I believe it's a privilege for me to have the clients that I have. The people that pay me, that put bread on my table, I believe that it is an absolute privilege. And I believe that I cannot tell them enough how much I love them, appreciate their business, respect them, how I will go through broken glass on my naked stomach, figuratively, to do whatever I can for them. But yet most people don't. At the first sign of trouble or issues or problems, they're going to turn tail and run. Compressive Technologies. There is no running. We leave nobody behind. Number 5. I want to make sure we stay on time because we've got a bunch of these things to cover. Number 5, no promise of a future. No promise of a future. Now, in sales, we call that the always tomorrow. Right? In sales, we believe that there's always tomorrow. Now, legitimately, yes, you're probably not going to die tomorrow, hopefully. And the sun will come up tomorrow, hopefully. The reality is, however, is that tomorrow you could die, and tomorrow for you, the sun may not come up. Now, I know that's a rather dire position to be in. However, in the military, that's a truism. They needed to make sure that every person that there realized that they weren't going to be there. I remember hearing some of the, if you listen to a lot of the old clips on D-Day when they were, heading towards towards Normandy. And the individual commanders were kind of reminding people, do you got your wills done? Make sure you have your notes for your family. And they're telling the people in front of them on this military, amphibious transport, as it's chugging its way to the beach, yeah, half you guys are probably going to die. And you're figuring, oh, shit. Well, oh, Christ, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to swear. And you're thinking to yourself, well, which one am I? Am I in the live group or am I in the die group? Because at this point, I seem pretty close to the front of this transport. And when that door goes down, they're all aiming at the front. So if you think about that in terms of that no promise of a future, and by the way, this is, and I know that it sounds dire when you say it as a generality, but it is real. The same thing with business. We often talk about the dollar I don't get today. There's no guarantee I'm going to get 2 tomorrow. If I commit to making 10 prospecting calls a day, and for whatever reason I don't make those today, am I committed now to add those on to tomorrow's 10 as well? And now do 20? Not only tomorrow's 10, but to make up for today's 10? Well, in a perfect world, you should. Most won't. Most will kick that can down the road. I hear it so many times, and it's interesting. I always look on the calendar looking for someday. I'm convinced it's between Wednesday and Thursday. Because everything is going to happen someday. Yeah, we got a social media. Yeah, we got a Facebook post. Yeah, we don't put anything on it. Someday we should really start thinking about that. Yeah, someday we should do this and someday we should do that. But the reality is there's no guarantee of a future. Now, in the military aspects of it, through the Compressive Technologies ideology, that's true. But I tell people all the time, and these are my training and coaching clients, a relationship with me is not infinite. It's not infinite. There's going to be a period of time, regardless of the forces that do it, that we're not going to be together. That doesn't mean it's just that chapter of whatever that chapter is closed. You don't look back on that with negativity. You look back on that with fondness. And yet, we never say that. We never say to the people that we're doing business with, prospects and existing clients. Now, I don't want you to bring up what the end of the relationship looks like. That's not appropriate. But what I do believe is that you should know how to make sure that everything that can be done is done within the time frame that you do have. Set clear expectations. Identify goals for a period of time with an evaluation point. So Bonnie, here's what we're going to do. In January, we're going to do this. In February, we're going to do this. March, we're going to do this. Blah, 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 blah. And then we get to December, we're going to do this. And then in January, we're going to sit down, we're going to look at the last year and decide what the next steps are. There is no guarantee of a future. And yet we live in this world where we're convinced that what we don't do today, in some way, shape, or form, is going to... And anyone that's ever had kids, I think this is a great example. My daughter is going to be 33 in October, and she just blessed us with 2 beautiful grandsons. One is 2, one that's 1, and we have a 6-month-old granddaughter on the way. I can close my eyes and remember my daughter's the day that she was born, and I think to myself, where the hell did 33 years go? I'm so young. Where'd it go? And yet it seemingly went like that. My 2-year-old grandson, my 1-year-old grandson. I'm sure in 5 years from now, after our 6 months pregnant daughter with Victoria, our granddaughter, I'm going to be saying the same thing. Where did 5 years go? Go figure. But we live in this world where we kick the can down and down and down and down and down. And unfortunately, the problem being is the world catches up with us. And now when we should have been doing things, I love to use the example on this particular session of smoking. The number one mechanism to get people stopping smoking, and I've had people say, well, it's the patch, and it's hypnosis, and it's blah, 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 blah. You know the number one thing to get people to stop smoking? A diagnosis of lung cancer. That is the number one thing that will make you, more than the patch, the gum, hypnosis, anything else, but then it's too late. It's too late. Now you've already created the problem. It's likely you're not going to be able to solve it without some enormous intervention, if at all. We continue to kick this can down the road, and in sales, it's even worse. Because again, we believe that, the sale I don't make today, I don't necessarily make 2 tomorrow. The dollar I don't get today, I don't necessarily get 2 tomorrow. There's a great little card that I have on my mirror at home. And I encourage you to write this down and put it somewhere where you see it. I will do today what others will not, so I can live tomorrow as others cannot. I will do today what others will not, so I can live tomorrow as others cannot. Now, let's talk about what that actually means. So I tell people, get up early, get to the battlefield early. Get all your stuff done so you can hit the ground running at 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. Most people, they don't start their day till 9 o'clock. Well, to the person that wakes up at 4 o'clock, we're 5 hours ahead of them. Or the person that cuts off at 2 o'clock because they're tired. Or at 5 o'clock, I can't tell you how many times I'll go into a client's office, and at 5 o'clock, God forbid you're in front of the door. Because the stampede to get out. And I'll stand by the door and say, good, come on, quick, this way. We put out the toxic gas at 5 minutes after 5. Quick, get out. Now, and I say that comically, but the reality is that so many people are the mechanisms to their own demise. They stand in front of their own success. They start too late. They end too early. And I tell people all the time, sometimes you're so close, but you don't even realize it. And I've had people that, I'll send them out an email at 4 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock at night. And I'll get a response back. What are you doing up at, 11:45? My day is done when my day is done. That's it. The day is done when the day is done. So a call, an email, a quote, something. When that's done, the day is done. Why? Because you don't kick the can down the road. Now, they knew that you couldn't do that either. They knew that you couldn't talk about longevity. You had to be able to be legitimate and honest and make sure they understand that the fact that you're there today, you're going to go to a bad place, because they knew that stuff was going south in Europe right before World War II. They knew that it was just a matter of time before we're going to have to jump in the war. And they realized that at some point in time, these guys that thought they were protected in any one of his, dozens and dozens of boot camp bases, they're going to be someplace highly disagreeable. And there's a very good chance that people on the other side of that line really want to do everything that they could to hurt them and kill them. No promise of a future. You can influence today, and that's why I love the line, you can't change the past. You can't change the past. There's no guarantee of a future. The only thing I can influence is now, today, this moment. And I'll go one step further, because it's such a gift. That's why they call this moment the present, because it's such a gift. This is what I influence. Don't assume you have tomorrow to tell the people you love them. Don't assume that you have tomorrow to tell your clients how much you appreciate them. Don't assume that you have tomorrow to do the quote, to do this, that, no. No guarantee of a future. Let's keep going, because we want to make sure we get through all these guys. People see the connection. People can see it. It's always interesting, because I love situations where I'm at a place where people introduce me to their friends. And it's always interesting that the friend that they introduce me to is nothing like them. They don't look the same. They're not even the same age. They're the body, creed, religion, vastly different. You think to yourself, why in the world? I have a friend whose best friend is a triathlete, right? His best friend is a triathlete. This guy rides bikes 50 miles and swims in cold water and then runs in the heat. And my buddy, he's got to be 300 if he's a pound. But he's only 5'2". Now you think about that. How could your best friend be somebody who's physically fit and you're clearly not? People see the connection. There's something about chemistry. There's something about chemistry in the military, and they would foster that. They would take the people in platoons and they would look at the people that were naturally connecting one another. And they tried to put them in cohesive jobs. So maybe they were on a team for a machine gun, or maybe they were on a team for a mortar. You see it in business all the time. It's the people who go out to lunch together, who go out to dinner together. They take their vacations together. It's the person when one person is homesick, the other person jumps in to do their work. It's the ones that they're in a meeting and one person comes up with an idea and they finish the sentence. People see the connection. They see the chemistry. And yet, all too many times, we start to develop this chemistry with someone in the business world or the sales world or a prospect or a coworker or a colleague, and we just neglect it to the point where nothing ever develops. Even though there's a natural spark, you've got to put some tinder onto that flame in order to have it go. Now, the military knew that. They knew that a lot of their jobs in that first 30 days would be easier if these people naturally connected. And you would always see those. You would see the people that just for whatever reason made that connection one another. And yet most people in the business world, they never, now I'm not talking about the romantic connection, nothing like that. What I'm saying is that you connect up, you meet with somebody in whatever environment. And you've got similar ideologies and similar values and similar concepts and similar goals and similar directions. And you leave thinking, wow, I really like that person. And they think, they leave and they go, wow, I really like that person. And nothing ever happens. The spark is there, but nothing else. I encourage all my clients, when you get a life-changing person in your life and you know who those people are, you throw gasoline on that relationship. Don't assume that it's going to naturally bring up. You throw gasoline on that relationship. That's what they would clearly do in the military. Because again, they had 30 days to do this. Now imagine, and we're not even through the list, but imagine if you implemented these types of things cogently and correctly and appropriately. What type of almost lifelong bond will you create with the relationships that you have? They will never leave you. They will always hunt for you. They'll always look for opportunities. They can't thank you enough. They can't tell you how much they appreciate enough. It's so obvious the contributions you're making in each one of your lives, and that's why we come back, is they see the connection. I'll go back to the great relationships between the lead singers and the guitar players, the Steven Tylers and the Joe Perrys of the world. You just saw it, right? Not that the rest of the band, they weren't friendly with the rest of the band, but there was something special here. You see it with actors and actresses. You see it in roles that people play. You see it in books that you read, and the characters in the book are so rich. It's almost like that the chemistry is palpable. And yet, we in a sales world don't take that. We don't run with it. We will willingly walk away and allow it to be neglected. Let's keep going. What time we got? 12:25. Okay, we're going to cover all these. Okay, let's keep going. You feel better around them. You feel better around them. You know, it was interesting that my daughter, when she was young, and I love to use, relationship things because I think we can all identify with it. When my daughter was young, 4, 5, 6 years old, if she went to a party, birthday party, something like that, and she would be there with all of her friends, all the kids from her class, all the people that she was friends with, and then her best friend would show up, or if her best friend was there and she would show up, that person would just light up. Even though they were with all their other friends doing a million great things, and we all have a version of that, when your spouse shows up, when your best friend shows up, when that person that takes the dull party and puts it over the top and makes it into, is the life of the party. You feel better around them. And they would build that in. Again, I'll go back to the military because so much of that comes in pressure. They feel better around you. What they would do is they would create situations for that. They would give everybody a pass. So if you got a pass to go off base, you got leave for the weekend, your whole platoon went. It wasn't like, okay, you get to go and you get to go and you get to go and you get to go. You all got to go. Why? Because you would all go out and get a drink together or dinner together or carouse together. You would create environments where you felt better around these people. Even in a bad situation. I remember when I was sick, when I was young, and we all had our version of this. You only wanted your mom. Right? Now, in reality, the best thing would be I want a doctor. I want somebody that knows what's wrong with me and how to fix it. But no, when you're young, you just want your mom because your mom has godlike ability, or at least my mom did. The idea was you feel better around certain people. A bad situation is better around certain people. That's one thing I love about being here in Tucson. It's beautiful, bright, warm, and sunny every single day. It's hard to have a bad day, at least environmentally, here in Arizona. But all too many times, the very people that we feel the best around are the very people that we don't go around. Now, whether that because it shines a glaring light on our depression or unhappiness, I don't know. This is sales training, not therapy. But what I will say is when you feel better around someone, especially in the compressive technology ideology, what am I going to encourage you to do? Figure out more ways to be around them. Surround yourself by upbeat people. Surround yourself by positive people. Surround yourself by successful people. There was a great study that came out previously, when I say previous, about 20 years ago. It said you are the average of the 5 people most influential in your life. Your spouse, maybe adult children if you have them, neighbors, parents. You are the average of those 5 people that are the most influential in your life. Now, I'm not making a value judgment. These are wonderful people that have wonderful hearts. But you are going to be that average of what they are. And yet most people continue to surround themselves by the very opposite of what they want. They want to be positive, upbeat, and ambitious, and yet they surround themselves by negative people that are not upbeat. Now, again, I'm not making a value judgment. I'm not talking about families. This isn't therapy. But the idea ultimately is if you feel better around someone, what am I going to encourage you to do? Now, especially in a sales situation or a business situation, I'm going to encourage you to create environments that include these people as often as possible. Invite them out for lunch. Talk about some kind of cooperative thing that you can co-produce together. Look for legitimate reasons to get that person involved in your world. Why? Because you want that positive influence. You want their knowledge. You want their energy, whatever it is, but you want to have something. And that's why the military was so concerned in saying, if we're going to do all this in 30 days, we better figure out a way to have these people want these people in their lives. The last thing you want to do is have people at the end of their time in the service say, that's it, I'm gone, I'm never talking to you again. These are lifelong friendships that were forged at a boot camp that regardless of what happened on the battlefield are never going to end. And that's what I hear all the time. Now, it could just as easily be your sorority. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I'll talk to people that are in sororities or fraternities, and I'll say, what was your song? And they haven't sang that song for 30 years, and they know it word for word. Why? Because it had such a life-changing event for them. Sales and business is the exact same. Nothing happens by accident. Professional selling is very elegant, but it's also very tactical and strategic. Feel better around them. Look for ways that you can continue to do that. And finally, that there's a forever connection. And I use the word together forever. Together forever. There is some lifelong connection. It's the person that feels so compelled that they're going to get a tattoo of something that you share, right? You see a lot of that on the first leaves. Where was that? People see the connection. They feel better around you. And that was interesting. That was one of the things that I heard uniquely when we were doing this session, and I was kind of interviewing the people that were in the military. And one of the things they like to do on the first leave, and it was kind of, at least for this particular branch of the Marines, is on your first leave, you would all go get tattoos. The idea was you survived boot camp. And you would get some like really ominous tattoo, right? I like the ones that were really, really big for the 101st Airborne was the death from above, right? They had the little parachute, right? And had a little skull, and it's coming down. It was death from above because you were a paratrooper, right? Well, how cool is that, right? You get some little demure 5-foot, 100-pound woman, right? Sporting this giant death from above tattoo. I could see her at the PTA with their kids, right? Death from above. Now, I would personally think that's kick-ass, but that's just me. But the idea is that you were together forever. There was something that bonded you forever that was never going to change. Whether it was you were on the Little League together, you went to high school together, first boyfriend, first girlfriend, first of anything, first business partner, first boss you ever had. There was something that bound you together forever, and that was memorable. That will never, ever, ever, ever change, that life-changing experience. Now, I've had people say, well, Don, sales and business, it isn't this intense. It's not this in-depth. You're wrong. Sales and business is just a relationship, no different than dating or business or college relationships or elementary school relationships or kindergarten relationships. It's two people. We're social creatures. But what the military has determined is there's certain aspects of our socialization that can be enhanced. They can be added to. They can be embellished to make those relationships that might happen organically. Every one of these things, by the way, can happen over 40 years. You can have a person you knew from grade school that you were friends with all through high school, all through college, right? They live on the same block. We vacation together. And a lot of these things will organically happen over a long period of time. And if you have that long period of time, that's golden. The reality, however, is in business, specifically sales, you may not have that. You really only have one opportunity to make an amazing first impression. You generally only have one opportunity to be able to create something that is so memorable, that shared experience, that what we've connected up with, whether it is a sense of loss, love who they love, sense of value, all of these things that were artificially created by the military so that when you did get on your boat and go over to Europe or to Asia or wherever you ultimately ended up, you were going to think and act as a United States soldier. And your number one concern wasn't for yourself. Your number one concern was for everyone else that's with you, as evidenced by the people that jump on hand grenades and run in front of a bullet and go through the hail of gunfire to this very day on the questionable spots on the earth. This kind of stuff is no different. They've never changed this. If you go to the boot camps today, I mean, obviously maybe some of the technology has changed, but conceptually, they're still shaving their heads. They're still doing all the stuff they did, even prior to World War II. Why? Because it works. We're social creatures. Now, here's what I recommend for the people that are listening. First of all, write them all down. Number two, the two actionable ones, all right? The two actionable ones is this one and this one. These are the ones that are the most actionable. Shared experience and love who they love. So I'm not a big homework person. I figured that if I tell you, it should make enough sense where you should do it. But now I'm going to give you homework. I would like you to find a love who they love example and a shared experience example. A love who they love example and a shared experience example. And I would like you to try to do it in the next week and see what happens. See what happens when you do something nice for a person who your prospect or client loves. Something very simple. Watch the, we call it emotional currency, but you look at the emotional currency you get from that one very, very simple giving thing. And then finally, shared experience. Find something interesting, amazing, different, unique. And by the way, it's not expensive. It's really not expensive. In many cases, there's little or no cost for a lot of the things that I'm talking about. It just wants to be something which is different and is memorable. It's not, hey, let's go to Starbucks and, and learn more about each other. I will guarantee you, in the memorable column, that falls away, but fast, right? Take a hike with someone, right? Take the same hour and take a hike. Put on your running shoes and take a hike. That would be far more memorable than anything you're ever going to do over a conference table. Compressive Technologies, shared experiences, sense of loss. They recognize their life will be diminished if you're not in it. Love who they love. If you love who they love, they cannot help but love you. They cannot help but appreciate you. And you'll never have to be low bid. You'll never have to fight. You'll never have to argue. These will be the best clients that you've ever had because they see the value, the privilege that it is to do business together. No promise of a future. Again, that goes without saying. You can't change the past. There's no guarantee of it tomorrow. The only thing we can influence today, and let me tell you, that tomorrow is going to come a hell of a lot faster. I turned 61 on August 4th. I still think I'm 17. What the heck happened all this time? I don't know. Unfortunately, the time that passes all too quickly, we lose the opportunity to change the outcome, to influence the outcome. Should have saved more, should have taken better care of myself physically. All of those things we lose the influence on as we continue to kick the can down the road. People see the connection. Look, they'll tell you, right? Whether it's, in my case, a lot of it was musical. I'd play with somebody and you just clicked. Sometimes you just meet somebody. And it's like you understand what they're saying. They finish your sentences. Don't let that go by. Realize that that's some special magic that doesn't exist with everybody. They feel better around you. I always wanted to be the person that people felt better around, right? I have a buddy that says, you're like a beer commercial friend. And I was like, well, what does that mean, right? You ever see the beer commercials, right? You have 10 people helping you move, different races, creeds, backgrounds, everything. And here you got these 10 people, right? Try to get somebody to help you move now, right? Oh, my sacroiliac, and I can't, oh, my shoulder, right? No, right? If they feel better around you, if people feel better around you, they're going to find ways and opportunities to be around you. If they feel worse, well, they're going to feel worse. So if you're losing people in your world, there's a very good chance that you're going to be in the latter column. They feel worse around you, not better. And then finally, that you're together forever. That there's some kind of component. When I say together forever, I'm not saying it figuratively. I'm saying it literally. That there's going to be some connection you'll have. It's the person that you knew in college. The best friend you had in college, or you had in high school, or that we're on the football team together. And 20 years passes. You haven't heard that person, seen that person, you haven't heard of that person, and you see them. And the 20 years just goes like that. It's like you're immediately 20 years younger. The connections you had, the things that you shared, the experience you have come all rushing back. That'll never happen, whether that 20 years could be 50 years. Right? I love the stories about the people where they would have a spouse die in their 70s and 80s, and they would somehow reconnect with the person that they started dating in college, and they would get back together again, or dating in high school. I mean, that's the idea that you have this lifelong connection. We do it in sales all the time. We do it in business all the time, if you're open to it. So thank you so much. It's an absolute privilege to be bringing you this every month. So for the people that are joining us, it's not lost on us that there's a lot of things that are competing for your attention out there in the world, from the media, online stuff. There's so much noise in the machine, and the commitment and contribution you're making to your sales education. We'll come back to you many times over. So on behalf of myself, Don Zavis, National Sales Trainer, Sales Coach, International Keynote Speaker, I wish you good selling. Bye-bye, everybody.